Well, hello, hello. It is Sarah Jane coming to you exactly at midnight. I think it's one of the best times of the day and the night when the earth is really, really still and quiet, and everyone is sleeping except me, and my cat Splash is here with me. And I wanted to speak to this thing around trust. I've had a lot of people asking me this week what the heck trust is anyway. And it took me a while. It took me a while to speak to this. Hi, Cassie and Dan. Nice to see you here. Good midnight to you, or whatever time it is in your day. So yeah, so I want to talk about trust and also the power of rabbit medicine. When I was on my way to see a horse client on Tuesday, I there was a little gray rabbit, couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 weeks old, lying dead in the road. And I stopped and I picked it up and I did a bit of ceremony and put him on the side of the road. And his spirit had already gone, but his body was still there. And it was just so young and beautiful and innocent. And I didn't really integrate the message until today. I went out again to see another horse client and was met with another tinier little black rabbit lying dead in the road. And I wanted to speak to this today because it's something that I think we're all feeling this week and certainly this year, and that really is not to take medicine from rabbit, to not be frozen in fear and be afraid of your own magic. Um, there's a beautiful little poem that says, "Scared little rabbit, please drop your fright. Running doesn't stop the pain or turn the dark to the night." And I think that's really what rabbit medicine shows us, that there's always a way out of any situation. And we have to trust that the universe has got our back, um, and is inviting us to move forward in life. And if you are going to take a nudge from rabbit medicine, like I did this week, it was to really trust in the timing of things, that there's a time to burrow into a safe place, to nurture yourself and release your fears until it's time to move again into new green pastures, that is clear of any sort of prowlers who want a piece of your of your energy. And I'm just looking at this. I'm reading from the medicine cards, which I absolutely love, that says that if you've tried to resolve a situation in your life and you're feeling unable to, you may be feeling frozen in motion. If you've ever watched a rabbit, they kind of freeze and their little noses are twitching, but the rest of their body is completely still, so that any sort of predator that's flying above looking down thinks the rabbit is dead. And that it's that frozen fear that actually keeps the rabbit alive, but it also knows when the threat is gone and when it's time to move again. And I think that's something right now that all of us could really do with a big dose of, is to listen to the lion-hearted leadership that is in you, the magic that's in you, to trust your innate abilities and capacities, and also your body's natural intuitive process to keep you safe, so that you can show up in the world and share what you came here to share, like only you can. And I think that it is such great medicine, as I said, because rabbit always indicates that there's a time when we actually need to push pause. And this has sort of been the theme of my little daily love notes this week, of trusting that there's a season for everything, and also trusting that you're a lot more resilient and a lot braver than you often give yourself credit for. And I certainly needed a dose of remembering that medicine this week, because things are chaotic and there is a lot going on out there to distract us from everything. Hi, Pam. But if we can just quieten ourselves down enough to listen and really receive the power of the intentional pause, right? And that's the power of the pause is permissions, it's patience, it's persistence, and above all, it's the presence to trust. And we have been urged to go into the burrow, to turn inward in October and really reevaluate the situations in our life that maybe are not working for us or are inviting us to expand and grow into. That we can't keep leaning on the outside edges of our comfort zone and not jump for joy. Think about the little thumper that's little foot thumps away when he's ready to take a leap forward and come out of this frozen state of fear. And a lot of the chronic diseases that I see in my clinic, especially fibromyalgia and any kind of immune disorder, often the roots lie in unresolved fear, right? In the inability or the shutdown that we feel based on our beliefs and our experiences in the past that we think we cannot overcome. Lost my train of thought there for a moment because I was just kind of feeling into that. But that frozen fear is often irrational fear. It's not based in reality. It's not based in the truth of where you are now. And that sometimes we need to reevaluate who to trust, the time, trusting the time to move, trusting that the universe has your back, trusting that you have support from your physical friends and your ancestral helping spirits and your animal totems and your animal companions that are always there to say, come on, be brave, step into a new way of being, trusting yourself enough to trust other people, to trust in what you're creating, and to not be frozen in fear, which really is what rabbit medicine is all about. Hi, Hadia, nice to see you. So we're talking a little bit about rabbit medicine and the power of timing, of trusting the right timing, and also how, what the heck is trust? We speak about, I can't trust this, and I can't trust the government, and I can't trust, and I can't, but what can you trust? The one thing you can trust is you, to discern in a good way that everything that you're choosing is there to really support you in stepping into your magic making, into your co-creations, and into right relationship with other people, with people that can hold space for you to grow, that are encouraging you, that are supporting you, that are cheering you on. And, I think trust plays such a huge role in relationships, doesn't it? Give me a hell yes in the comments if you're getting this, because it's a very abstract concept and an important one, to speak of trust. But a lot of times as an abstract construct, how are you supposed to figure out how to practically create it in your relationships? And that's really what I want to speak about today, because I think essentially, you've got, when we're looking at trust in relationship, we're looking at who can we rely on. In the spiritual practice, it's the trust in God, or in the trust in a higher order of things, or that it is a beautiful initiation, but it can also be a coping strategy that comes with a lot of shadow when we're not trusting ourselves and we're placing our trust outside of ourselves. And if you've kind of been in that situation where you feel like you can't rely on anybody else in your life, you're always going to look at where you can't justify. You're looking to prove that you can't trust other people. So, here are a couple of examples of follow your own way, so that you can trust yourself to follow your own way and be supportive of your own best interests, and not put the power of trust in other people, or to make other people make you feel good, or how about this one? And tell me if you've ever said this one. I can't trust anybody else to make me happy. I have to make myself happy. And they're all ideologies, really. And they can be beneficial from some vibrational set point, but they're slightly misleading because they portray the idea that there's something less spiritual or powerful or actually pathetic and depending on somebody else. And in the spiritual field, you get a whole demographic of people that are intensely embodied in their own feeling, but they have distance from crappy relationships. So I want, if it's not trust, if it's not simple, it's not trust. So I'll make this really easy for you. What if trust is allowing you to capitalize on my best interests? Just let that sort of settle in for a minute. Because I talk about this in different ways, but it's a big one, that if you can trust that people are going to show up and do exactly what you know that they're going to do, because we're all quite predictable, then there is no disappointment. And it's about as non-scientific as we can get to look at what trust actually is. So notice, I'm not saying I can rely on you to capitalize on my best interests above your own. And I'm not saying that you're responsible for my happiness either. Trust is simply, I can rely on you to capitalize on my best interests. And this is what makes relationship worth being in. So keep in mind that as you continue to expand and become more aware and more conscious of what you're creating, your idea about what's actually in your best interests are going to naturally shift. But it's not an excuse to usurp somebody else's ideas of their own best interests by you thinking that you know what's better for them than they know. And this is very common in relationships, especially when we're little, that you're told you don't get to do this. It's not in your best interests to go and ride on the back of a motorbike without a helmet. That was one my mother used on me, and she was right. But when I'm saying that what I think is good for me is what's best for you too, so I'm just going to negate what you think is in your best interest and superimpose my ideologies on you. And it starts with our parents, and I think that's where we lose trust, is in childhood. And, we're talking about everything from huge betrayals, but, the betrayal of trust really is built on this foundation of a lot more smaller things. It's built in the foundation that regardless on what you're saying your best interests are, I'm not going to honor that. And it may seem abstract in a very personal setting, but I want you to just consider for a moment what that would do in a business situation to this value of trust and integrity, where, say if two businesses are trying to find a win-win scenario for each other, and imagine if one company said, you know what, I actually don't think you know what's good for your company. What I think is my terms are better than yours. So just sign your name here on the contract. And one company might be going, no way in hell, thank you, tear up the contract. But when there's relationships that are very personal, we have a lot on the line. We have a lot to risk. So we don't walk away that easily. We sign our name along the dotted line, and then we build resentment, and then we feel taken for granted. And then our relationship turns into total crap because you have no trust for the other person because they didn't consider your best interests when you wanted to make a decision. So, take another example. Say that there is a couple and one of the parties decides they're going to go and sleep with someone in their best interests, but the other person wants the relationship to be exclusive and committed. And so A didn't capitalize on person B. So there's no trust there. One is playing a zero-sum game where one wins and one loses. And when there's conflicting needs from the other person who didn't consider person A's best interests and didn't have a conversation to resolve the needs conflict, there's never a win-win, right? Your house of love ends up being the house of your enemy. And it's easy to think about how trust works when we look at things that we're not attached emotionally to, where you're looking at two companies that are in a business relationship that are trying to agree to terms, and they're both presenting their best interests and then working to come up with a win-win situation for both parties. And yet we can't see that in our own personal interests, that it needs to be exactly the same way. And why I practice deal and deliver and teach it to all my clients, because it works. It works for a win-win. Especially every relationship we have is a relationship, right? Every interaction is a relationship that should be treated with regard and as an immense gift, not something to be resentful about or fearful about. It means we need to step up and value that gift and take care of that gift. And it doesn't matter what relationship you're on. When you love someone, you are taking them as yourself. In Afrikaans, they call it voetstuts. You take it as is. So it doesn't work to think just about your own best interests, because if you are creating that atmosphere of oneness and union, you can't hurt the other person without hurting yourself. So big breath, because the minute you develop a relationship with someone, they have handed over the most vulnerable aspect of their being, right? They've handed you their heart for your safekeeping, and you've done the same for them, right? This is where we tend to our own gardens so that we can tend to others, right? But it's not disempowering, right? It's not disempowering to open yourself up and be transparent and give the vulnerable aspect of yourself to somebody else. The opposite of that to me is not trust. That is brave, to be able to give and receive the most vulnerable aspects of someone else's beings and letting them see you. This is what intimacy is. Being willing to let somebody else see into your soul, where you're both completely responsible for your own happiness, and you come together and you make each other's lives greater than it is alone, right? And when you do anything that is based on mutual distrust, it's because there's a mutual agreement to stay separate and not expect each other to capitalize on your best interests. Trust is what's needed for successful relationships, where two people agree that they are holding their cup of responsibility to act in their own best interest and also their partner's best interest. And it's critical that you sit down with yourself over the weekend and have some moments of self-reflection to make yourself really clear about what your desires, of what your best interests are, of what you are asking for, so that you can create a win-win situation, deal and deliver. So, going back to that business example that I gave you, it's like, if you don't know what your company needs out of this, not only is the other company that you're wanting to create a merger with going, how can I if I don't know what you want? It's just a perfect opportunity for the other party that do know what they want to set the parameters. So you need to find out what your best interests are. In retrospect, is always going to create distrust. You need to know that you have boundaries and figure out what you need and what your best interests are, so that you can clearly communicate that to the other person. Because I don't know about you, but that's the only way that we can create right relationship with other people. And it's really, really simple, to look at, how can I trust myself fully to meet somebody else in my transparency, in my intimacy, right? In that invitation to say, look inside of me. There's nothing to hide and there's nothing to prove. This is it. The open book. That's how you build right relationship. And who wouldn't want that? Because when we can start treating each other with that level of respect and honoring and vulnerability, fear can't exist. Judgment cannot exist from that place. And when we can start opening our hearts to be kinder and more compassionate with each other, then we have a fighting chance, or a peaceful chance of turning this crazy world that's driving not only our species, but the planet and everything else to destruction, back into harmony, that's a win-win situation for everything. And what I believe that the future of any business transaction, right? Every relationship is a transaction. How does money come to you? Through people. So if we're going to create a new frequency of money as the highest vibrational code of love, we have to learn to ask for what we want and act in the best interests of not only ourselves, but the collective. So could you just take one step closer to yourself and ask yourself, spend some time over the weekend asking, what is the deal here? What do I have to be in order to get this thing that I'm asking for in my best interests and the interest of long-term sustainability to manifest? And will the person that I'm asking that of, including holding myself to the highest standards, going to be willing to meet me there? Not can they, but will they? Because those are two different things. And another reason why relationships often go all over the place, right? They end up destructing. So trust that you're enough for your body, you're enough for your life, you're enough for your animals, you're enough for your business. Trust that the universe has your back. Put your trust in people that you know you can trust to show up and be their authentic, vulnerable, transparent self, to meet you. And this is what I love about being human. We were born with eyes to reflect the beauty that we see out there that resonates with the beauty we can't see in here. So I see you, I honor you, I send you love and blessings, and a very good night. I'm going to go to bed now. I have finished my last client. The joys of working with people that are 10 hours behind me is that I get to stay up later when the earth is quiet and everyone is sleeping, and connect with you somewhere in the rest of the world where perhaps you're just saying goodbye to the sun or good morning to a new day and a new opportunity to return to trust. And tomorrow, I'd like to share a very short and easy, simple exercise that's going to support you in returning to trusting yourself. So if you like this, please share it, spread the love, give me some hearts, give me some insights, comments, questions. Because without you, it's not so much fun talking to myself. But I'm a verbal processor, so it's a great way for me to actually process what's happened in my own life and give blessings and thanks again for those two little baby bunnies that never got to live into their adulthood. Some of the best, most beautiful medicine comes as just a glimmer when we're most asking for it. And it's so important to be able to receive that. So I receive it, and I thank Rabbit Medicine for the message that I received not once but twice this year, and wanted to share with some of you that I know have been feeling very frozen in fear, to not be afraid, because you've got this. All right, lots of love. Bye. Mwah.